think for me the most difficult and most interesting question is around defining goodness. What should I do? What should someone do on the grandest scale? I think the foundation is especially tricky because of our mortality. Initially, there can be a sense of hopelessness. Ultimately, I believe there's no objective meaning to life. In fact, I think it's an absurdity to even ask the question. It's a poorly formed question. And yet there's still some craving and desire that most of us can relate to, at least in a subjective way, to understand a meaning of life. And at least for me, that's where I try to derive an understanding for the grandest shoulds. Certainly on smaller day-to-day levels, moment-to-moment levels, we can listen to things like discomfort. And, if one of our limbs are falling asleep, you can rearrange it, right? So on a short time scale, we can listen to pain and discomfort. But on a very, very large time scale, thinking about the future and trying to abstract across all of humanity or consciousness becomes a very difficult question. And while I'm happy to admit not only that it's a difficult question and that I believe objectively there's no meaning to life, I don't think that it's an unanswerable question. I do think that some of these edges of how and why it's difficult start to actually expose the answers. Let me see if I can try to articulate this. Somewhat similar to the way I believe anything of value needs to land in reality. I guess we can look at my definition for goodness, where I say the only objective definition for goodness is what works, and then we need subjectivity, preference. Hidden within there is a requirement of entities capable of subjectivity and preference. And so I think some of the ultimate meaning is to perpetuate life, perpetuate consciousness, perpetuate the capacity to perceive. I suppose sentience would be the best word, perception and sense of quality of experience. I think that's almost fundamentally necessary to even begin trying to answer the question of what is good and therefore what should be done or not. And so it leads me to a claim that survival of some sort, we can further define whether or not that's personal survival of your family, your community, your ideals, but I really think it comes down to survival of consciousness, sentience, perceptive capacity, and ability to sense some sort of quality of life experience. And then beyond that, I am absolutely grateful for anyone who continues to attempt altruism. But for myself, I spent most of my life trying to save the world, so to speak. And even though I'm attempting to give that up, I'm still here attempting to share these videos and ideas with you to help improve our lives together. Really one of my most uncomfortable lessons at this point in my life is that I should stop trying to save the world and really narrow down my focus and focus on where I can be of greatest effect, which is probably not in any sort of general form spread amongst humanity, but more so having family. And so for me, the survival of myself, my partner, my children, and really it's my family line, my greatest contribution to the future will likely come via how I raise my family, what I give to them, and what they're able to take away and take forward from me. And I don't have children yet, so there's still an obvious question of, well, what do you do in the meantime? And I think there's an endless number of opportunities to improve how we embody being a person and the different archetypes that our children will notice. What does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to be, in my case, a man or a father or someone who works? Embodying a good person for your children, I think, is one of the most important ways you can contribute to the future, the world, future sentience. And jury's still out. I'm not 100% set on this yet, but also in the meantime, I can at least be working hard to obtain assets, particularly long-term assets, things like real estate that, if laws don't change, my children can eventually inherit upon my death with a reset cost basis, so on and so forth. And so I can gift forward into at least my family line or my inheritance path these resources to carry forward and enable them more so than if I was lazy and not producing and maintaining and building these assets to give to them. I think a huge piece of this that can't be overstated is finding a good partner and having a good relationship with that good partner. The person, ideally the mother with whom I'm going to have and raise those children, is incredibly important. So in summary, I think it's important to perpetuate sentience in the universe, and I think that the place that I can personally contribute the most is in having good children, and the way I think that I can do that the best is by being a good person, finding a good partner, and attempting to collect resources to support my children's lives and their children, and so on and so forth. I guess it might be slightly interesting to note that this doesn't exactly provide a solution of meaning for the selfish self. Even though this is not exactly a generalized, flat distributed form of altruism, I do think, at least for me and probably for most of us, it is the most appropriate way to align ourselves in support of meaning and what we should do. So the simplest possible form of the answer that I can give is be a good parent.